Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. Oh my gosh. Today, guys, I have the guest of the century. I am joined today by one of my favorite friends, one of the people that I have worked with the longest, and a woman that I've looked up to my entire career. I am joined today by Janis Gibson. Janis has almost 34 years in corrections. She started at the old Edmonton Remand Center in 1989 and was a correctional peace officer all the way up until 2012 when she decided to join the ranks of a correctional service worker, so a CSW. She was doing that as we opened up the new Edmonton Remand Center and then rocked over to the Correctional Planning and Innovation Division in 2017 to take over a bunch of our tech work, all the stuff that we were struggling with. And she just is amazing at organizing. And then she came back to us in 2019 as a Correctional Service Worker 3, which is a supervisor, and then left us again for the good old corporate world, back into correctional planning and innovation, which is where she's been ever since. We miss her every day at the jail, but I am so excited to have you today. How are you, Janis?
I'm doing very well, Nikki. Thank you.
Like I said, I'm so excited about this. I was thinking about this episode last night and I was like, I can't wait for like our conversation, and I can't wait for, just like reminisce and talk about old days and things like that. Because like I said, I started in 2002. You'd been there for, like 20 years at that point, living your best life, doing your best things. And I met you on night shift. It was my first night shift. I think I was had been in the jail 2 years or something. And they were like, okay, you're going on nights. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing on nights. And they're like, oh, and you're going to A&D. And I was like, oh, fuck, I really don't know what I'm doing now there. And to the listeners that know who Janis is, everybody knows Janis was the queen of the court list. So she would put together the list. So for all of our listeners that don't work in a jail, every night there's a list that's generated that says all of these inmates from all these different units have to go to court. And back in the old jail, it was all in person. We didn't have video court, nothing fancy like this. They all came down in the morning, starting at 5 a.m. and they were transferred out, or they went to out of town court, or they went to, Edmonton court, and the list had to be made by somebody. And Janis was the queen of the court list because not only did it have to have their names, it had to have their inmate identification number. So back in the day, those were COMIS numbers. Then they had to have the unit that they were coming off of. Then it had to have if they had separation. So if they were not allowed to go with another inmate from a different unit, that had to go on the list too. And she had to organize all of this and then print it all on one legal-sized piece of paper. and then photocopy it and then distribute it across the building. Okay, so you think, this alone is a big deal, right? Guys, she was doing it on a fucking typewriter. Let's let that marinate. She was doing this on a typewriter, okay, guys. And not only this is not in 1989. She was doing this on the typewriter. I mean, she was. But I went down and was helping her, and it was 2004, you guys, and we were still using a fucking typewriter to do a fucking court list. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm going to fuck this up because how many times do I type on the computer and they go delete, 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 delete as I've written the wrong word, Janis could do this shit, guys, with her eyes closed, no mistakes, no having to go and tick, tick, tick the typewriter back and then fix it and then use the way she could just and bring out this court list. Okay. So if this right now, I hope you all understand the gem of a woman that this person is that's on the podcast today, because I tried it. I fucked it up royally. I remember you standing over my shoulder and being like, no, you can't. No. Can you just get out of the way and I'll do it? And I was like, yes, please. Here, go ahead.
We need to get this out by a certain time.
You're like, that this has to go out. They have to know. They have to get these guys up at 5 a.m. What are you doing? Can you? And I was like, I'm trying as best I can. Oh, wait, tick, 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 white out, white out, white out.
Yeah, back in the days of whiteout. Oh my
Yes,
Lord.
back in the days of white out. I'm telling you, it's totally true. Okay, so you have seen it all. You have done it all. You have been through, like, and again, as I was thinking about this last night, you've literally been through the evolution of from the typewriter to you're now innovation planning. You're dealing with the computer systems that we utilize every day to track our inmates, make our court lists, do all these things, right? So you've seen it all and done it all. So tell me, how did you even fall into this? How did this come to be? How did you get into corrections? And let's journey through 34 years of corrections.
Well, originally, after high school, I went and took a RN program at Grant MacEwan. And after the year, it was a 2-year program. A year into it, we were in postpartum and delivery, and I thought, yeah, this is too boring for me. So I quit after a year, went and worked in the oil in sales for about 3, 4 years. And then all through this, it was like, I want to do something else. And my dad is an RCMP, so I've always been intrigued by criminality and why people become criminals. So I actually had gotten into corrections, a correctional services program at Grant MacEwan. And while I was doing that, I thought, well, maybe I'll try out for Vancouver City Police of all police agencies. And I went out there, and funny story. I was staying at the Sandman Hotel downtown Vancouver, and my vehicle got broken into. And then they were supposed to pick us up and take us to Stanley Park for a run we had to do. And the people that were picking me up were late. So then we were late getting to the place where we were supposed to start running. And then running is not my strong suit. So my thing was, I was just going to follow the pack. Well, the pack caught out of visuals. And then I took a wrong turn.
Oh, no.
So my time was a little off. But they let me continue the swimming and everything like that. And I thought, and then as they're going into different aspects of the whole recruitment process, they were talking about how you spend most of your time in court. And I thought, you know what? This is just not what I'm really looking for. So I continued on with my corrections. And when I originally got hired, I was actually hired at Edmonton Young Offender Center as a CSW. And I was working also at ERC as a corrections officer. So there's a little difference in pay. So every time I worked, which was most of the time at ERC, I was being paid as a CSW. And then personnel got a hold of that, and they says, you need to choose which one you're going to work as. And because at that time, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for CSWs, I went the path of the jail guard, correctional and peace officer. So I was that from 1989, I got full-time until 2012 when I became a CSW. And then the ORCA, which is our new offender management system, I was part of that. I was part of the subject matter expert when we were designing the program. It was an off-the-shelf product. And I was involved in a lot of the gap sessions, what we needed it to do and how we needed it to work. So then in 2017, I broke my leg. And rather than sitting at home on WCB, I says, oh, well, if they need staff at the BTU, well, I'd like to do that. And because of the experience that I had already with the system, and I was also a trainer in the jail for the system, I thought, great, I'd love to do that because that was kind of my end goal as far as corrections. Like that was how I would like to finish my career, was doing that. And I thought this would be a great opportunity. So I went, and I was just on a temporary salary doing that. And then in 2019, ERC was looking for a CSW3 supervisor, and I applied and got that. So went back to ERC. And then 6 months later, the BTU was hiring that position permanently. So I applied and I got the job. So I've been there ever since 2017 with a 6-month break.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, wanted to pop on here before we got into this next episode and let you know about a couple new rad ideas that we have for the podcast. So, the first one is we have a survey up, and I would love to know what you guys think about the show. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your ideas for the next season. And I just love to know what you like and what you dislike about the podcast. And I'm going to sweeten the deal with a $50 gift card randomly drawn from everybody that completes the survey. The survey is going to be in the show notes of all of our shows. So no matter what time you start listening to the podcast at, you'll get a chance to win that gift certificate. The second thing that we're bringing in now is the ability for you guys to leave us a voicemail. You guys can actually call into the show, leave us a voicemail, let us know what you think about the show. If you have a funny story you'd like to share from your time as a first responder, I would love those and showcase those on the show as well. So make sure you guys check out that voicemail feature. It's going to be in the show notes, and check out the survey. Make sure that you get that chance to win that gift certificate. It's amazing. Like when you're saying, subject matter expert, like you literally were the person, even for Comus. Like I remember coming to you and being like, I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know how to find this, or I don't know how to, dig through, wade through. So for our listeners, Comus was like, if you think about Atari, like the green and black screen, that's Comus. Or Join, if you still use Join, it's very similar to that. Yeah. Comus was very much like that. And so you had to know like little shortcuts. You had to know kind of like the nuances of like how to dig through some information and find what you needed to find in Comus if the inmates were asking, or, like if an outside agency is calling. So I always remember kind of coming to you and being like, I don't know what this. And you're like, oh, I just look here, do this. And then when Orca rolled out, of course, it was a huge change. Like that was, I remember like, and everybody in corrections knows nobody likes change. Oh my God, heaven forbid we jump into the 21st century with a new product that's not green and black fucking Atari. But everyone was all worked up about it, and everybody was all upset that we were moving. We had to learn this new thing. And a bunch of our old guys were like, "Oh, these computers, we'll just write it in the logbook. We don't need those computers." And so taking that project on and then trying to train everybody, and at the same time, we're opening the new Edmonton Remand Center because corrections doesn't like to do things easily, guys. Just FYI, they like to do it all the hard things all at once and make it really fucking challenging. So let's not only switch the inmate management system that we've been using for 40 years, let's switch that at the same time as we open the biggest jail in Canada and go from a closed supervision model to an open supervision model, which is entirely different in training and how you're going to do things and how you're going to supervise inmates and how staff are going to feel about it. Let's do those two things at the same time. And so Janis and I usually commiserated on either having to train people on, I was training for the new jail, you were training for Orca, and both of us just going like, fuck my life, this is the worst ever. This is the fucking worst ever. Again, Janis and I are very similar in that we're kind of straight shooters, and we say what we want to say, and that's why we love each other. We say what we want to say. We tell it like it is. People don't really like that, but they know when they put us in those roles, we're going to get shit done. And so that's really probably why both of us were selected for those positions. We were going to get the shit done that needed to get done. So tell me, like, starting, like, again, just because you've gone through this whole entire evolution. So starting back in 1989 at the old jail, like, did you start, you were obviously, like, because I've only ever known you as like Janis and A&D running the basement and like running all that stuff. But like, did you start up on the female ranges and then go to the male ranges, or like, how did that work when you started?
Look, when I started, we all know corrections is very patriarchal. It's evolved quite substantially over the years. But back then, as a female and a wage staff, because that's how I started at a temporary position, basically females always worked the female units, or you worked in the medical suicidal unit, or in A&D where we call the book bitch,
Yeah.
Those were the basic female positions in corrections. And I did work the female units and also some of the mental health units. And because 3 years into my temporary position, I ended up getting pregnant. And then that was also a challenge for the department because, oh my God, she's pregnant. Where are we going to put her? Mm-hmm. So I dealt with some of that. But I've always been lucky in the sense that I think my work speaks for itself. And because of that, I've been always given a lot of opportunities. I've always had a lot of respect given to me from senior management and directors. And yes, even though my approach sometimes and my delivery is not the best, they know the work will be done and it'll be done to a high standard. So I've been involved in a lot of projects like the Escort Mobile Data Terminal. So the thing that they use for when they're in the vans originally, they were going to put GPS trackers in all the vans and they were going to be loading the inmates on the computer system. I was involved in training that. Then I got into training Orca. I've been involved in, the behavior management unit when we first started at ERC. And I'm lucky, like I've had a lot of opportunities. And I've always been that person that a lot of times they want at the table, not because of my demeanor sometimes, but because they know I'm that outside voice that everybody thinks a lot of things that, oh, they're too embarrassed to say it. They don't want to, and I've got the playground voice and I will always ask the questions. And I don't care if questions sound silly or whatever. I would rather ask a question and have an answer, even if it's like, Janis, go pound salt, then always go, I should have asked that question. So because of that quality that I have, I've been given a lot of opportunities and I've always taken advantage of them.
Yes. I see. This is literally why we're kindred spirits, because we are exactly the same person. And because I'm the same, right? I'm the same as you. I will ask the hard questions. You will put me in a room and you will get what the actual people are thinking. If you want to know what people are actually thinking, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to hold it back. I'm not going to be the person that's like, well, maybe we should. No, fuck that. We're going to tell them what's going on, because I'm the same as you. I would way rather know what is actually happening out there, what the feedback is, so then you can make an educated and informed decision, rather than, oh yeah, sure, that's a great idea, boss. No, it's fucking not. It's a terrible idea. You guys are stupid. Why are we doing this? Like, which is where I fall apart also, because that's how I will actually say it in a meeting, and that's not appropriate usually half the time. Like,
I've been told many times in my career, Janis, you can't say that, and go like, I think I just did. And I mean, I've always looked at everything as, and I've been involved in some training at a staff training academy, presenting to some of the classes. And the one piece of advice I've always said to anybody, whether it's a male or female, is be true to yourself.
mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, we are government employees. We are a number, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if I'm a number, but I also have a certain work ethic. I have a certain standard of how I do my work, and to thine own self be true. Because in the end, I don't care. I'm not of the generation that needs to have, oh, good job. You did so good. You're such a good self. I don't care. I don't need to hear that. I know what my work is. It speaks for itself. And I just think that people they need to have confidence in themselves. They need to be true to themselves. Don't don't follow the leader, be the leader. And lead by example. Like, people can say what they want about me. A lot of people in my career have not liked me because of my brashness or my, direct. And that's okay. I can live with that. And I know it's prevented me from getting promoted, but that's okay. I can still look at myself at the end of the day in the mirror and go, you know what? I'm true to myself. And that's all I care about. And I've always gone out of my way to help people. And they may not like the answers, but they got an answer. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out for them. And I think that's where a lot of people have fallen short, is they get into a role and it's like, oh, I'm a CO3 or I'm a DDO. Like, you have to respect me. And because I know respect is earned, you get the respect because of the position, but the respect you get as a person has to be earned. And I think that's one thing I've always lucked out on, is people may not like me, but I've never heard anybody say, oh, I have no respect for Janis. And I think that's where things are important in corrections, is corrections is a tough go. And if you're a female, it can be even tougher. And if you're a female who's outspoken and, no holds barred, it can be even tougher.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went through some challenging times over my career, but at the end of the day, I held my head high and just thought, you know what? I'm going to be true to myself. I don't care if it pisses people off. I don't care if people don't like me. I'm not here to make friends. I have my own friends outside of corrections. And that's one other thing I've never really done is I've not made my coworkers my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They are my work acquaintances. I have certain people that I have maintained friendships with, and those are my friends. Because in the end of the day, as I always say to people when they talk about, oh yeah, my friends, and it's like, you know what? Your friends only until they're not your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because they will not have your back if it's their butt on the line.
Mm-hmm.
So don't misguide yourself or give yourself a false sense of, oh, we're friends. No, they're not friends. They will stab you in the back
Mm-hmm.
if they have to, if it comes down between you and them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's,
yeah.
That's kind of been my whole thing in corrections is, I go to work, I do my job, I'm about wanting to leave it better than what it was when I came into it. And I want to help people, guide people through those processes, try to get people to drink the Kool-Aid, so they say,
Yeah.
because corrections, like you say, we had ERC, the new opening of the new center. We had the new offender management system. We have, and like the last probably 3-4 years, we've had so many technology and innovation changes that people are just being bombarded by technology, and technology changes so fast. So people are just like, every time you turn around, there's a change. And of course, agencies are great at doing change, but they're not great at providing people the guidance and how to navigate through these changes. It's like, here's a change to Microsoft. We're going to be doing this now. It's like, okay, well, how do I do this?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Microsoft Teams came out. It's like, we were used to Skype.
Yep.
Microsoft Teams, like, how do we do this? Like, oh, well, you just, and I'm lucky. I'm fairly adept with using computers, so I can usually figure shit out pretty easy. But there's a lot of people that they can use their phone and navigate their phone and surf the net, but to work in an actual program and figure things out can be a little bit more challenging. And some people can't even use a mouse, for God's sakes. I've told people.
I would say, I will tell you a very funny story. So at the jail, Excel, right? Microsoft Excel, I was considered advanced at Microsoft Excel at the jail. And so when I left the jail, I was like, I put on my resume, right? Like, advanced Excel, whatever, right? And I got a job.
Nikki. Advanced.
I had no idea. So I get a job in the corporate world once I left the jail, and Monday to Friday working in education. So I'm working with very smart people, like very smart,
a lot of advanced
who are actually advanced at Excel, right? And so part of the like interview process was to do an Excel test. So there was like a written part, and then there was an Excel test. And I was like, okay, no problem, right? So I do the interview. I know I killed the interview. I could tell I killed the interview. Like they're all like, yes, yes, yes. I was like, oh, I got this job for sure. I go into the little computer room. And they're like, okay, so there's these 5 Excel questions, there's this written document, and there's 5 more Excel questions. And I was like, okay, no problem. You have 50 minutes to do it. I'm like, okay, sure, no problem. So I sit down and I start with the Excel. Well, I don't know how to do fucking anything in these questions. Like, I fuddled through the first 2 and I was like, oh my God. And then the third one was like, make some calculation. I just kept getting like the hashtag ref. And I was like, I am not doing this. So I'm fucking around. It's 25 minutes and I'm on question 3 and there's still 2 more plus another 5 plus this written thing. So I'm panicking and I'm like, oh my God. So then I do the written thing. Written thing was easy. Okay, just word, like proof and word, this Word doc, no problem. I go back to Excel. I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, does this computer have the internet? Thank fuck it does. So I'm Googling, how do I fucking do this thing on Excel? And I was like, well, I hope they delete the history because if not, like it's right fucking here that I can do it. Figured out one more question on the Excel. And now we're down, there's 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, fuck it. I got to go to the next thing because otherwise I'm going to get none of these questions done. Well, the next 5 questions built on all the first 5 questions. Now make a graph you do this calculation, now make the graph in Excel. And I was like, I'm not getting this job. And like the cute little HR who actually turned into be one of my friends, Tatiana, comes in and she's like, at 50 minutes, she's like, okay, your time is up. And I was like, okay, no problem. And she's like, just save it to the desktop. I was like, okay, cool. Saved it to the desktop. She's like, how do you think that went? I was like, you know what? I think it was really good. Like, hopefully hear from you guys soon. I walked out. I was like, well, there goes that fucking job. The best part was they called me the next day and they're like, yeah, we'd like to offer you the job. And I was like, did you look at the Excel part? And the girl on the phone starts laughing and she goes, yeah, you don't know anything about Excel. And I was like, correct. And she's like, so did you just like lie on your resume? And I was like, no, honest to God, at the jail, I was the person people came to and asked about Excel because you know what I could do on Excel? I could make the cells bigger. I could make a table. I could move things around. That was my level of Excel. And I thought that I was advanced. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Talk about
Yeah.
being
It's
the most. Oh, I was mortified. I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, we can teach you Excel, but we can't, we want your leadership. And I was like, okay, great. Because clearly I need a fucking Excel 101 class because I don't know shit about Excel. Like,
yeah, there's definitely that part of corrections that you can teach people certain skill sets.
mm-hmm.
But things like common sense, you either got it or you don't. The ability to talk to people, training, presenting, like years ago, and I think they still have it, like Toastmasters. I remember when I was in corrections, I was giving the valedictorian speech, and I remember standing up there and I could feel my voice quivering because I hated public speaking. And everybody thinks just because I talk a lot that, oh, she can public speak. No, she can't. It's different talking to a bunch of people, but then when you're presenting or you're teaching, everybody's eyes are just focused on you. And I remember some advice I was given years ago, and I still give this advice to people. As you're teaching, just look at the people that you're teaching and think of them all being naked.
Exactly. And then
because that takes some of that, pressure off of you. And when I teach people to be trainers, one of the big things I teach them is that if you don't know something, say you don't know it, because there's nothing worse. And I saw this when I have kids in school. The teacher said, well, you know what? You tell your fucking teacher that she's wrong.
Yep.
She knows jack shit.
Yep.
And I always believe that if you don't know something, it's okay. Just because you are in a certain position, I would rather hear you say, you know what, I don't know, but I can find out and I'll get back to you, than be told the old theory of bullshit baffles brains. We're all very aware of that theory.
Yeah.
And all that bullshit baffles brains does is it takes any respect I might have had for you away. Like, don't think that just because you're giving me an answer, which I know is actually wrong.
Yeah.
But, you think you're right. You think that you're giving me an answer. So I think that's one of the big things is, like I said, with all this technology, and you were talking about how Excel is like, yeah, like everything's changing so fast. And sometimes it's just like, it's a struggle to keep up on the basic things that you need to do your job. But things like people skills, you can teach people that. How to use a certain program, you can teach people that. But a lot of people get those mental blocks. We still have it today, like with anything. Oh, I don't like Orca. So yeah, try teaching people Orca when they say, and it's drilled into their head, I don't like Orca. Orca's useless. Well, any computer is only as useless as the person using it.
Yeah.
The data we have in it is only as good as the data that's put into it. Bad data in, bad data out. That whole, like when I get asked by different centers, well, how come this isn't in there? You might want to talk to your staff and ask them why they didn't put it in there.
Yeah.
I can't pull something out of a system that your staff aren't entering.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you seeing, like, just because you had mentioned before, like, between 2019 and now, so 5 years, mass amounts of technology. So like what are the new changes? What is this new technology that's coming in? What are we seeing that's coming in as, I wouldn't say best practice because I know a lot of it is always changing, but what's coming in technology wise to make the job easier or to streamline things or to be able to pull different, data and different information out?
I think with anything, like technology has its advantages because we basically took three different systems. So we took COMAS from the adult and youth system, and then we took the community system and we merged them into one system, ORCA. And basically, that is our offender management system for the province. It gives us all the information. But like anything, we have ORCA analysts who actually, we are responsible. So the way it works is the centers are responsible for the data that their center creates. And then we have the ORCA analysts and we have our team that, we try to assist centers and guide centers in how to do things properly and how to use the system to its best use, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have what we always are all concerned about is data integrity. How good is the data in that system? And that's where I refer to, data is only as good as what's put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And we have users have the ability to have data changed, fixed, whether it be we've deleted ORCA numbers or we, delete bookings, delete a case note, whatever, based on, I put it on the wrong person. And the thing is, we would rather have that data that if it's on the wrong person accidentally, we need to delete it because otherwise that is a historical record on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, those capabilities, but, like we've got lots of changes like video visits now. Have opened up video visits completely. So now they can do online visits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for ERC only right now. So, they've like now we're still working on it, but we've changed our system. So now visitors can schedule visits online
Huh. Well, that's cool.
and they can do it from the comfort of their home, which makes a big difference because a lot of times people don't have travel.
Mm-hmm.
I live in I live in, Timbuktu and my, loved one is in custody at Peace River Jail. I can't get there. I don't have a vehicle. The bus only runs once a week, but I want to visit them. Well, you can do it online.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a really huge thing because it's, corrections, we're all about trying to help the offenders become responsible and go back into the community and be law-abiding citizens. But I mean, that all entails, like when you look at corrections, like what is important to inmates? Typically, it's canteen and visits.
Mm-hmm.
And, if people can't stay connected with their loved ones, that can be stressful for them and it can cause behavior issues and all sorts of things. So, like the department's really going to those areas of corrections that can make it better, easier for both family members and people in the centers, the inmates to, make their time more useful. We have, there's been a lot of review on administrative segregation and all that stuff. So yeah, there's been lots of changes in technology and it's constantly changing. It's like, we're going to do it this way today. I remember years ago, one of the people that was acting CSW, she was doing something and I says, oh, well, we're going to do it. We do it this way. She said, well, yesterday we did it this way. And I said, yeah, that's the joy of corrections. It changes every time you turn around. What we did yesterday, we're doing differently today. And I remember years ago taking a course in corrections and the teacher that was teaching it, I'll never forget. He says, corrections is full of people who hate change.
Yeah.
But yet it is a department that is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So I always find that quite interesting that corrections is always changing, but yet we have a lot of change resistant people within the system. And I think, that's always a challenge. And I think the more changes there are coming out at once, the harder it makes it because it's like, well, what's the priority? What do I need to learn first? Do I need to learn how to work teams? Do I need to learn how to work ORCA? And some people just struggle in computer technology, period. So now you're telling them, oh, you need to learn this. but yet how am I supposed to learn it? I don't have time to take a course.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do the course that's online, I'm not doing my job. So there's always all those challenges for people.
Yeah, that's definitely something I see too. And what do we prioritize? What do we need to learn? Or even like again with a big system like Orca, what do I need to know as a frontline officer? Because I know that we need to know all of this eventually, but like, what are the 5 things I need to know on how to do my job right in front of me? I need to know how to do logs. I need to know how to do counts. I need to know how to do case notes. Like, I need to know these 5 things. Okay, and now I can go do my job. But then eventually you also need to learn how to move inmates and you need to learn how to do, institutional charges and you need to learn how to do all these things. So these are all things you're going to have to eventually learn. But yeah, I think that prioritization for sure is a big thing. You touched on, and I love it because it's one of the things I respect the most about you in, care for inmates, care and custody and, our job. And so for those of you that don't know, even though Janis is like the most hard ass freaking person ever and says it like it is, you also have one of the biggest hearts that I've ever seen ever. And you are very compassionate and you are very empathetic. And that definitely
Secret, Nikki.
it's a secret. Okay, well, it's out, everybody. It's out. Although if you meet her, you'll be like, no fucking way. That was one thing that you were really good at. You were really good at connecting with the inmates and respecting what they were asking for and acknowledging and listening. And, and when you had to be hard, you were hard. And when you were compassionate, you were compassionate. And so how did you find that kind of transfer? Because like basically for me, having known you through kind of just your CO phase and then into CSW, to me, you always had that kind of CSW style where you were always like, I wouldn't say go over and above, but like if they were like, what about this? You're like, oh, well, here's this information. Or like, oh, I don't know how to get a bank card when I get out. And like, what am I going to do? And, I remember strip searching females with you in the basement and it being like, oh, she's getting out and her saying like, well, I don't know how to get this. And you're like, oh, well, just go do this and this and this, so like that little bit of extra information. So as you were going through your career, do you feel like you kind of like bounce between those two roles? And then what was that change like when you actually fully transitioned into a CSW role?
Well, prior to actually coming into corrections, I also worked for Native Counseling as a parole
Okay.
officer. I also did volunteer probation for 5, 6 years. So I always had that. And I think a lot of it comes from my dad. He was the type of police officer that he always had that ability to be able to connect with people. And to me, regardless of what somebody's position is, I think that's where its goal is to be able to have that ability where people respect the uniform, but they respect the person wearing the uniform most. And I think one thing I've always tried to get across to inmates is that regardless of the fact that I wear a uniform, I'm still a person underneath. I still have some of the same challenges that you may have, but I may have resources that you don't have. And I think that's where the difference is being able to connect people with resources, the encouragement, the ability to say, you know what, because one thing, especially, you've worked with female inmates a lot too, is that many times I'd have conversations while I was training these females and, like their self-esteem is in the ground and rightfully so. But I also looked at that and thought, you know what, if I'd been through what they'd been through, my self-esteem would be in the toilet too.
Mm-hmm.
So I always used to look at them and say, you know what, you guys have been through a lot. And if I'd been through what you had been, I'd probably be there too. But you know what? You need to stop looking at yourself as a loser or a piece of shit because you're strong to still be alive given what you've been through. And I think that's one thing I always try to remember is put myself in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just because I'm lucky I came from a good family, I had loving parents, I had good examples. So I had everything positive in my life. If you come from a background where you don't have a lot of positive, you don't have a lot of good influences, you don't have positive mentors, how can you actually come out on the right end of anything? And I think that's so important for people to realize that just because you wear a uniform, it doesn't make you better.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say in my career, I've seen people who were wearing uniforms end up on the other side in overalls.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always said that a lot of times those people are the people that treated inmates the worst.
Yep.
There's a fine line. And I remember one time changed into female, back in the day, here's your underwear and everything else. And she threw the underwear at me. She said, I'm not putting those freaking things on. I'm going like, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. I wouldn't want to either, but unfortunately, we're in the situation that you have a choice. You can either put those on, and she's wet and naked,
Yep.
out of the shower. I says, you can have the choice. You can either put that on, or you can put your own clothes back on. You can go back in the front tank and you can sit there. But if you want to get seen by medical, you want to get a sandwich, you want to get a bed, let's go this way. And so I always think like, and I remember changing girls on night shift, and like sometimes you have a female that you think could be a problem. So you'd ask for backup. And I was always cognizant of who I asked to back me up, because
Yes.
I want somebody that's going to back me up that's not going to cause problems or make it worse. So if I knew somebody had a mouth on him, like, just try it, get it done, get it done. It's like, you know what? Yeah, no, I'll change the person by myself before I'll have somebody like that come and help me. And I think, regardless of who they are and what they are, they're people. And, we need to remember that, because if we've been through some of the struggles that they've been through, who knows where we'd be, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that about A&D and nights, because I had that exact same thing happen. I was working A&D and I was the book bitch and I was on my own. And I think there was like 12 females that had to go to court. It was like a really high female number for whatever reason. And they're like, oh, well, we'll bring somebody down and help you out. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I mean, we've got time. Like, I'm fine. And they were like, well, no, like you're still kind of like young and you're still kind of like, we'll bring somebody down. And I was like, okay, like, I guess, but like, I'm fine. And the person they brought down was a very senior staff. And it was very much, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, as soon as she walked through the door, I was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be bad. And so then I was like trying to like basically get her to shut the fuck up and stop riling them up, because there's no need to rile them up. It's 4 in the fucking morning. And sure as shit, we get to the last girl and I fucking turn around to write down whatever I was writing. And I turn back, I hear the scuffle. I turn back around and we're fucking hands on with a wet, naked chick wrestling in the shower area because she jacked her up. And then, and it was like, I was just like, and then she's like, I got scratched. You better write this up because I got scratched. I was like, you got fucking scratched because you fucking started this fight. Like, you're a fucking idiot. And I remember walking out and like just looking, I can't remember who the CO3 was on, like the ADD, but I like looked at them and I was like, next time I got it. I'm fucking fine down here by myself. And he was like, noted. And I was just like, don't ever, like, if I need help, I'll fucking call for help, but don't send me somebody that's going to cause a way bigger fucking issue than we need to. And I never understood people that were like that. I never understood, why the fuck do you want to wrestle a naked chick that's soaking wet in the shower if you don't have to? Like, if it does not naturally evolve to that where you have to go hands on, why the fuck would you start that? Like, I'm good. Yeah. I don't need to be fucking soaked wet with a floppy wet inmate. Like, no, thank you. I'm good. Like, that never, I was, always hated that.
And that was the one thing I always did. Like, like I remember sometimes coming down a night shift and the person leaving for the afternoon shift say, oh, well, so-and-so is in the tank, they're being a fucking bitch. And I was like, and I'm looking at it, like, I've never had a problem with her, but it probably was you being the bitch.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
And I remember actually changing sometimes, and I'd say to the staff that was my backup, I'd say, okay, your backup, that means you keep your mouth shut. You don't say anything. It's only if I end up having a problem. You can even stand around the corner. Yeah. But keep your mouth shut, because I don't want to be wrestling with this person.
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth it. And it doesn't make anything any better. And I mean, like, I would rather take 5 extra minutes changing somebody and get through the process. And if they want to call me whatever, they can call me all the swear words under the sun. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just get through the process.
Yeah.
You want to call me names while you do it? That's okay.
Yeah.
Like, sticks and stones. I don't take it personally, and I get where you're coming from. But as long as you're changing while you're calling me names, I don't care. Call me whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's what some of the problem is. People get that uniform on and they think they're God's gift, and they take, you're not going to talk to me like that. I'm going, well, you're talking to them like that. So it's that old saying, whatever you put out, you're going to get double back.
Yep. Yep.
So, and I think, like I said, doing volunteer probation, it's just, I don't know, I've just always had that mentality. And I remember Terry Peel back in the day.
Yes.
I remember working with him, and he'd get so mad at me because I'd be on the unit talking to the inmates, and other staff then other staff would come up and they'd go, you know what, I have better things to do than watch you all day. That's your job, is to watch the unit. Just the fact that, because I mean, as a CO, I would go out in the unit and talk to the inmates and sit down and play cards with them. Back in the day when we had the pool tables, I didn't play pool, but I would play crib with them and stuff. And it's amazing the information you get, right? Because no longer are they looking at you as, oh, you're a guard on the unit. Now you're just one of them sitting at a table. And, back in the day, I'd walk on a unit, sometimes you'd hear inmates go, okay, six up. It's like, and sometimes you'd walk on a unit that they're used to you being on the unit, and they wouldn't even care. They wouldn't even take note of it.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd just be like, oh, hey, Miss T, what are you doing? Hey, I'm like, oh, hey, guys. Like, yeah, I totally, I was the same way. And that to me, again, if you wanted information, go and spend 10 minutes on the range. And like, they want to talk. They want to talk. So if you're willing to stand there for 10 minutes, they will tell you their life story. They'll tell you everything that's going on in the range. They'll tell you who's being a shithead. They'll tell you who's going to get jumped up. Like, they'll tell you everything if you are willing to stand there and listen, and they trust and respect you. Absolutely. I remember I had one inmate up on the 6th floor, and there was a massive shank, massive, in the garbage can. And it was underneath the garbage bag. And I had gone out, and they were on, it was, admin sex. They were all in 24-hour or 23-hour lockdown. And it was his half-hour exercise. And I was like wandering around, and I talked to him a couple times. He was like a little, I'll tell you the name when we're off air, but good guy, like decent con, pain in the ass, fucking, loudmouth, but decent, And so I'd walked around, I did my round. I was talking to him as I was doing my round, and I kind of stood there for, another couple 5 minutes just talking to him. Because again, he's 23 hours locked down. He's got nobody to fucking talk to except these other 12 guys on the range. And he doesn't want to talk to them because he fucking hates them all, right? And as I was leaving, he kind of wandered over to the shower area, and he's like, hey, Miss T, there's a massive shank in the garbage can, and you better take the garbage out. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, you better take the garbage out. It's really full. And I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. Thanks for letting me know the garbage is full. I was kind of like, making it a little bit loud. Oh, thanks for letting me know the garbage is full. And I went over and, okay, scooped the garbage. I was like, oh, this garbage can is disgusting. Like, I'm going to go hose this garbage can out. What have you guys been putting in here? Blah, blah, blah. I took the whole garbage can out, pulled the garbage bag out. And they had managed to break off a piece of the windowsill. And it was like, I want to say 2 inches thick or 2 inches wide, probably, half an inch thick. And it had been bent to go around the knuckles, and they'd sharpened it to a point so they could basically stab somebody with the side of their fist. It was a huge shank. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, if he hadn't have told me, somebody would have been dead on that, 100%. Whoever it was intended for on the next exercise round or whatever, they would have been dead. And I remember going up the next day and doing my round, and he was in his cell, and I was like, I just gave him the old, like, he's like, God, we got you, Miss T. We like you. And I was like, okay, good, because holy fuck, right? And all it is taking the time, walking around, talking to them, starting to figure out who's who knows who, what's going on, what are they going to tell you, right? Like, that information is all forthcoming if you're willing to listen. So yeah, I totally subscribe to that same thing.
The thing is too, I never cared what inmates were charged with. And I mean, they could be sex charges, they could be anything. I don't care. I will treat you based on how you act. You want to act like a dick, I'll treat you like a dick. You want to act like a person, and you want to talk about something, you want information, I'll help you. But this whole idea of, oh, they're cons. Well, you know what? It came home to me very shortly after I started in corrections. I was working out in the fort, and we were having a unit meeting. And one of the inmates said to me, we were talking about, being in jail and how people end up in jail, blah, blah. And me and my, youth and stupidity, I said, oh, like, well, I wouldn't do anything that would, make myself land in jail. And I was, and after that, I was like, and he said to me, he says, do you speed? I go, yeah. I got lead shoes.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, so you speed in the dark, so you could run somebody over. I was like, no, I mean, and back in those days, drinking and driving, like I worked in an oil patch many times.
Yep.
And could I have, ended up killing somebody? Sure. I am a mother. You are a mother. I have daughters. And I always say, if somebody ever did anything and harmed my daughters, I would be capable of murder, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like
Yep.
people that think that, oh, I am above, that I would never do anything. All it takes is the right circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And
the
so
wrong choice.
don't ever fool yourself into thinking that you would never. There's no such thing as never.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So.
I always said that too. Even just looking at inmates and like you said, I came from a decent background. I came from, like not wealthy, but not poor. And, like I had parents that aren't the awesomest, but, like they still were there and they were working and they were, trying to provide. And so, and then I would look at, dealing with inmates and I'm like, you literally grew up and have been raising yourself since you were 2. Like you've had no mentorship, you've had no parents, you have nobody that told you they loved you, nobody that hugged you, nobody that put you to bed, nobody made sure that you had food, right? Like those are like that. Obviously, you're going to set you down on track. And I would always say too, but there's choices that you make, right? And there's choices that they can make, and there's choices that we make. But it's a very thin line of one wrong choice when you're on the good side can put you way over into the jail side real quick. You get drunk and you punch somebody in the face. And they fall down and they smash their head off the pavement and they're dead. Well, guess where you're going? To fucking jail. Did you think you were going to jail when you went out that night and got drunk and punched somebody in the face? Nope. But guess where you are? You're in fucking jail, right? Like it is. It's a very fine line that separates, and people think it's not, and it really is. So yeah.
Oh, and all it takes is the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. Like you say, nobody goes out to a party or goes out to a bar thinking, oh, when I'm finished here, I think I'll go get in my vehicle drunk and maybe I'll run somebody over on the way. Like nobody does that.
Mm-hmm.
Shit happens, right? Life happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And it doesn't make, and I've always looked at, just because you're an inmate, it doesn't make you a bad person. I run into inmates all the time on the street, and I've never been concerned. Like I remember when I first started, somebody said, oh, you don't want people to know your first name. I go, I don't care if they know my first. I don't care if they know my last name. Like I don't treat them in a way that I would have to be concerned if they got out that they're going to come hunt me down. Like inmates have better things to do than hunt me down. And typically, if they hunt a staff down when they get out, chances are,
Yep. Staff fucking
karma's a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. If you treat people like shit, like you said, it's going to come back twofold. It's going to come back twofold. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, we have chatted a lot and we've covered a lot of stuff, but I always wrap up my podcast episodes with some rapid fire questions. And this one, I love this one because for those of you that don't know, Janis is also one of the best bakers you have ever in your entire life ever had the privilege of eating her baked goods. So best banana bread I've ever had in my entire life. Thank you for sharing the recipe. No, I'm not sharing it, people. You can fuck off. Best banana bread, brownies. Janis would always bring something delicious and cookies. She would always have something delicious on night shift and be like, have baked all day and bring in so much stuff. And thank Jesus for you, because you're literally what got us through night shift a lot of the time. But honestly, God, one of the best bakers. So this question I love. What has been your favorite food or snack while you've been on shift or while you've been working? Or you can even segue it into what's your favorite thing to bake and bring on shift?
I would say, well, and anybody who knows me or who's worked with me and inmates have commented many times over the years, like I always equate myself to being a cow because I like to graze. So inmates have always said, my God, every time I see you, you're eating. And I says, yeah, I know. Like, and the fact that what I'm eating is not usually nutritious because I do have a sweet tooth. I love chocolate. And, like people would say, like, I'm surprised you're not 500 pounds. I says, I know, I am too, literally. And I remember actually on night shift, because I used to make homemade cinnamon buns. I'd make them and then I'd bring them into work so they were still warm. And I remember one night, one of the DDOs, he was bending over getting a cinnamon bun, and he says, "Oh my God, your buns are so nice." and his butt was facing me. I said,
Yeah.
well, your butts aren't too bad either.
What GO was it? Can you share the name?
Buchanan.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. So, like I said, I always, because my thing, and even now, like when I bake, I love to bake, but the problem is because now I live by myself. If I bake it, I eat it. So usually when I bake, I take it to the office. And usually when we've had get-togethers, everybody said, "Oh, Janice, bring your brownies, bring your brownies." And funny story, I actually gave my a chocolate cake recipe to somebody that I work with, and we were working night shift, and his wife made the cake. I'm going like, he says, I don't know what she did, like because the cake recipe was basically it was an idiot proof. You didn't have to mix anything separate. You just put everything in a bowl, bake it. It was idiot proof. And he says, I don't know what she did. Like they're really dry. And I'm going, I tasted and was like, what the fuck did she do? If this is idiot proof, I says, I'm never giving you a recipe of mine again.
Well, I will. You gave me it's your aunt, I think your Aunt Betty's banana muffin recipe. And I
Yes.
use it all the time. And the girls ask me all the time, Mom, when are you making Janice's muffins? When are you making the Janice's banana muffins again? I'm like, well, you gotta not eat bananas and then we'll have bananas. Oh, guess that happens every week. So guess what? How many times we make that recipe? All the fucking time.
Well, and they're so moist.
They're
It's so good.
They're
I
so
love it.
they're so good. Like
Yeah.
absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I've gotten a few recipes from my Aunt Betty over the years, and they're all really good recipes.
Yes. Like,
Yeah, and actually my brownie recipe too.
Yeah. See? So yeah. Okay. So brownies and yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, you already gave a good piece of advice. So I love that you kind of like touched on that. I'm going to take you back again, back into your days at the old jail. We'll go old school because they are tearing it down now, which is I was down in Chinatown last week and I was like, oh my gosh, like,
I know.
wow, like it's coming down. It's crazy. It's just so crazy to think that like all that history and stuff is coming down. I'm sure.
Oh, those walls could talk.
Oh, right? Insane, insane. But what was one of your like fondest memories from working there?
You're gonna think this is cool, weird, but I remember because remember years ago when I first started corrections, you could smoke anywhere.
Yeah.
I remember taking over from A shift, the two older senior staff that used to knit and stuff.
Yes.
You'd take over from them, and there'd be ashes everywhere. There'd be coffee spilled on the logbook. So it's just a holy mess. But over time, when it became a non-smoking building, and we had a certain area that we would go to smoke, I think like some of the like I remember one of the DDOs years ago, Gord Varnica. He went through a phase and he quit smoking, and then he started smoking again. He says like people when we smoke, we like the conversations and the information you hear, like those are like those socialization moments. Like when you get together, people let's sit down and have a beer, right? So some of the conversations, I think, so the fondest memories I would say are back on night shift when we'd go to those places and
Yeah.
sit back and we'd socialize and things like that. But just in general, like I found the camaraderie back at the old center was so much greater than what it is, and there was legitimate friendships, long-term friendships that were formed over those years. And I mean, and I still keep in touch with some of the old staff that have retired and as much as, because there's that common ground, like some of the things that we were allowed to do in the old days in corrections, which are really frowned upon now and are illegal,
Yeah.
But there's that camaraderie in that you knew your partner had your back.
Mm-hmm.
There was that allegiance. There was that, I don't have to like you, but you're my partner and I will have your back no matter what. Whereas now, like I say to people, like, you know what? Yeah, that ain't happening.
Yeah. It's totally true. Like I feel very lucky that I had the opportunity to spend like the first kind of 10 years of my career at the old jail and then transition to the new jail because I totally agree. Like the camaraderie, the friendships, like again, I'm still friends with people. I haven't worked in corrections in 5 years and I'm still friends good friends with people that I worked with at the old jail, like, and transitioned to the new jail and, met some people there too. But it's and you, like you said, you always had your partner's back. Like, there was no, oh, I wasn't paying attention. Oh, the seriousness of the job was there. The care and the attention for your partner was there. And I think that has really started to lack. I think obviously the size of the new jail is a big factor in it not being as tight, right? Like, you can work on pod one, and never see pod five. You could never see those staff unless you're in muster at the beginning of shift or walking out at the end of the day, and you still don't know who the fuck they are because you haven't worked with them ever. And they're just 12 other guys that work on a different pod. So I definitely see that. And I think that just the style of people that worked at the old place versus the new place, like, there's just, yeah, like, it just was a different time. It was a different vibe for sure. Like, and I just, like I said, I feel honored that I got that chance to be part of that old stuff and kind of see it. And like you said, like, you still see some of those people, they've retired and you're like, oh, how's so and so? Oh, they're good. Like, oh, that's awesome to hear. Like, I think that's awesome that you can still have those relationships even though those people have been gone for, sometimes 10 years they've already been retired. It's crazy. Like, which actually is a great segue question, because you're 34 years in. There's rumors already out there that you've retired, which I have to keep squashing and be like, no, she has not retired. But you can go in a year, which is insane because we all, like, work our career for 35 and out, and you can go in a year. Are you planning to go? Are you planning to retire? What's your future plans?
Well, as I always say to the manager that I have now, like, I love my job. And I feel that I still am contributing in a positive way. I still feel like I have a lot of knowledge to pass on. And I always say to my coworkers, like, all this stuff that I have in my head, I'm trying to pass it on because when I retire, I don't need it. I don't want it. But unfortunately, you can't pass on information by osmosis.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People have to want to learn. So as far as retirement, I always say, like, I don't see myself not wanting to work. Unfortunately, don't live in a climate that is conducive to, doing things outdoors all year or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Traveling costs money, like through the nose nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I have no grandchildren. I have lots of grand dogs that I look after on a regular basis. And so as far as retirement, I've always said I would like to stay around for the next offender management system. I would also I will stay as long as I want to work because why would I quit a job that I love doing? I feel like I'm still contributing in a positive way. And I have benefits, like I have,
Mm-hmm.
great people that I work with. So to go and quit that job and go work part-time someplace where I feel like I'm not making a difference in
Mm-hmm.
anything, yeah. So as far as retiring, I'm going to retire when I don't want to work, when I literally want to just sit on my ass and do nothing.
And
And
bake.
unfortunately, I'm not good at sitting on my ass and doing anything. I can't even sit in a chair for a long time and do nothing. So I don't know, like, cause and it means, like, they say, well, you could travel. I says, yeah, but traveling, like, how long can you travel? Because travel costs a fortune now.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, as long as I want to work and my marbles are still rolling around properly, I'll probably keep working. Like, I love my job. Yeah. Or until my manager pisses me off enough and I go, you know what? Fuck you. No, I'm not going to do that because I know you're not getting 2 weeks notice. I won't be in for the rest of my life. Goodbye.
I fucking love you. You know what? It makes me happy though to hear that. Like, because it is true. Like, you like what you're doing, you feel fulfilled, you're doing work that matters, you're doing work that's important, you're working with good people. Like, again, yeah, I think if you're happy with where you're at, then there's no need to retire. You might as well keep getting a paycheck, you might as well keep getting benefits, you might as well keep doing what you need to do and living your life. And then yeah, exactly. When it becomes no longer fun or it becomes like, man, and you have a good flexible schedule too. I think that's a big part of it. Like, if you have the flexibility and you have you can work when you need to work and you can work from home when you want to work from home and you can, like, that stuff is super flexible too. And I think that plays a big part of it. But yeah, I'm good. I'm glad that there's going to be Janice sticking around for a little bit longer because we all need a little bit more Janice in our lives.
A lot of times when people ask me, when are you going to retire? And I says, I don't know. There's still people I need to torment yet, so I won't bring her example for a while.
Oh, girl. Well, this has been a slice. Like I said, I was like, so excited to do this with you because I just wanted to catch up with you and chat with you, but it's been awesome. I've learned from you too, which is amazing. I did not know that your dad was an RCMP, so I think that's really cool. And you're doing an amazing job. Keep up your awesome work ethic and all the things you're doing, and keep being the most authentic version of you because it is the best. It is literally the best. I love it. It is. And I will say, like, again, to our listeners, like, I know I've heard from people that are like, oh, Nikki, like, we love that you tell it like it is. And, it's really inspiring. Well, listeners, guess where I learned it from? I learned it from women like Janis, and I learned it from, people out there who are willing to speak their truth and are willing to not be liked for it. And so if you're that type of person, keep shining bright, baby. Keep shining bright. Keep doing what you're doing. The world needs people like you, and we make a difference. So thank you for making a difference.
And it makes it hard because it's not usually acceptable to do that as a female. It's more acceptable to do it as a male. Yeah. So you have that double-edged sword that you're being that way, but you're also a female, so you should just keep your mouth shut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Don't keep your mouth shut, ladies. Fucking rage on. Rage on. Speak up. Be heard.
That's right.
I love it. Well, it has been great, Janis. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're on vacation right now, so I appreciate that you took the time. Do you have any last words for our listeners?
I would say no matter what you do, as I've always told my kids, pick a career or a job that you love to do, because no matter what, you work many years, you work long hours, you put the majority of your life is working. So I don't care if it pays you $5 or it pays you 5,000. Find a job you love to do and be passionate about it.
I love that. Mic drop moment. Boom. That's 100% it. Find a job you love and be passionate about it. And I love it. Yes. Well, thank you, girl. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day.
You too. Always nice chatting with you.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six.